All right, so we know that the Syrian regime has fallen. Assad is out of power. Biden calls for Assad to be held accountable. That's right. That's right. Tough talk from Joe Biden. In the first full U.S. reaction to Assad's overthrow by an Islamist-led coalition of rebel factions, Biden also warned that Washington will remain vigilant against the emergence of terrorist groups, announcing that U.S. forces had just conducted fresh strikes against militants from the Islamic State organization. The fall of the regime is a fundamental act of justice, Biden said from the White House. It's a moment of historic opportunity for the long-suffering people of Syria. Asked by reporters what should happen to the deposed president, who reportedly has fled to Moscow, Biden said Assad should be held accountable. So, obviously, having it both ways here, it seems pretty obvious to me what they're trying to do is create a power vacuum, which then justifies further Israeli incursion into the area. But we'll get more into that a little bit later in this show, and more, and obviously in the days and weeks to come. But that line there, Assad should be held accountable. Reporters asked Matthew Miller at the State Department what he meant by that, and would you welcome some intervention on the part of the ICC? And this is a pretty hysterical interaction.
Yesterday, that the Assad regime, or Assad himself, should be held accountable. Will you support his application to stand in front of the ICC as a war criminal who committed crimes against humanity?
So we support the work of the ICC. I know that obviously we have disagreed with their hold on. Let me address it.
We support the work of the ICC until they do something about it.
So we have had a long. Let me just answer the question.
Our favorite man on earth, Matt Lee. They want to play that again. That reaction from the room. Big laugh line. That one. We respect the ICC.
Support the work of the ICC. I know that obviously we have disagreed with their hold on. Let me address it.
We support the work of the ICC until they do something about it.
So we have had a long. Let me just answer the question. You know what, Matt? Let me answer the question, because I was addressing that before you interrupted me. We obviously have had a jurisdictional dispute with them as it relates to cases against Israel. That is a long-standing jurisdictional dispute. But that said,
it's a very deceptive way of saying that. It is not simply a jurisdictional dispute. You reject the merits of the warrant. You reject the merits of the claim that Netanyahu is guilty of war crimes. It's not just that Israel is not a state party to the Rome Statute. It's that you reject the claim outright. It's not a technicality. It's not a jurisdictional dispute. It is that too. But aside from that, you would defend Israel at the, let's say we were state parties, we would defend them at the ICC. Sure. So that's a ridiculous way of saying it. I mean, that's a very, very sleazy way of saying it. And who does he think he's fooling? These are journalists. These aren't MSNBC chuds you're talking to. Matt Lee, you're not going to slip that by Matt Lee. Jurisdictional dispute. All right, keep going.
We have also made clear that we support broadly their work, and we have supported their work in other cases, despite our jurisdictional dispute when it comes to Israel. But that said, when it comes to Assad, I suspect that before you ever get to the ICC, the people of Syria are probably going to want him to return home and stand judgment for his crimes in Syria.
He's not going to return home. I mean, these are Russians under the Russians' protection.
I doubt that he's going to. I mean, if he's not going to return home from Russia, I doubt he's going to transfer himself to The Hague, leaving Russian protection either. My point being, should he ever decide he's willing to face accountability, or should the Russians decide that they don't want to continue to harbor a war criminal, there may be a whole range of people in line to hold him accountable for his actions.
Okay.
Should the Russians decide they don't want to harbor a war criminal? I mean, the balls on these people is just unbelievable.
Didn't we just have a war criminal address Congress to
rapturous applause, literally a red carpet for a war criminal.
Standing ovations?
Yes. How many standing? It was a record for standing ovations. I don't think any Americans gotten that many standing ovations. It was I forget the numbers. It was like a 52-minute speech, and they got like 55 standing ovations, something like that. It was a record. Yeah. No person has gotten more standing ovations in a congressional address than Benjamin Netanyahu. Yeah.
Netanyahu beats Lincoln.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the Caesar Act, but do you think that the U.S. is undermining the trust of the international community in organizations like the ICC and ICJ by making an exception for Israel when trying to convince us that Assad and the like of Assad should be brought in front of the
so again, I think it takes too narrow a view of the ways in which he could be held accountable for his crimes by just focusing on the ICC. Because I do suspect that whatever comes out of the wake of the past 48 hours, you will see a demand by the Syrian people that he return to Syria and face justice for his crimes, and that would be the court of first jurisdiction before you even get to the ICC. Okay, so that's true. But when it comes to the overall question, I know we have a disagreement with other countries around the world, but this has been a long-standing, good faith disagreement about where the ICC has jurisdiction and where it does not, based on the fact that there is no recognized Palestinian state.
Okay, but that was the norm, because it's what happened with Rwanda.
There you go. Based on the fact that there is no recognized Palestinian state.
Well, we don't recognize Palestinian. Yeah. Most of the rest of the world does.
Yep.
Most of the rest of the world recognizes a Palestinian state. We uniquely do not.
Right. So you see it all laying bare right there. And clowns twice. They laughed at him twice in that less than 3 minute exchange.
And that's an empire that's losing its authority. As hard as it is to imagine now, and yes, people outside the United States were always disproportionately more wise to the hypocrisy of the United States, but it was by no means a majority. People within the broad umbrella of the Western nations, the industrialized nations, the advanced nations, there was a time that most of them, just like Americans did, maybe not in as high in numbers, but in majorities, accepted the American mythology of America as the leader of the free world. Right? When they did polls, America was always overwhelmingly positive among that class of countries, overwhelmingly positive. People had very positive attitudes. When you would go travel overseas, you go into the stores, they're playing the Grease soundtrack. You know, all of these things referencing this very idealized America of blue jeans and big cars. They were very fascinated by that. Now, no one accepts the idea that we are in any way this morally just nation, to the point that you have the White House spokesperson literally having the press corps laughing in his face. At that point, it is over. Something we always understood very well was how important propaganda is. That's why Hollywood has always been one of our greatest weapons. And when you lose that propaganda war, it has a snowball effect in terms of policy around the world.
Right, because that room full of journalists they're not alternative media podcasters. That's a Washington press corps there. And what Matthew Miller said there echoed pretty much word for word what the Washington Post editorial board wrote, which is that if the ICC goes after Israel, it's going to undermine their ability to go after the real war criminals, which are the Axis of Resistance war criminals, Putin, Bashar al-Assad. I don't think they mentioned him by name, since this didn't blow up at the time conveniently yet, which we're going to get to in the next segment. But that is essentially the Washington consensus. And so when that room is laughing at him for saying that, you see how quickly and how severely that consensus has fallen apart. Because they'd be the last persons to laugh in your face at that.
Yeah. Well, especially because, I mean, just whatever your personal views are, it's unprofessional.
Right.
Express yourself in that way. The fact that they would do that, that's really the emperor's nakedness is just so exposed that everyone's just pointing it out now.
Please clap.